lives in your way. No more tears do we cry, and we have finally dried our eyes, and we're moving on up. Lord have mercy, we're moving on up.
Good afternoon, good afternoon. Welcome to the August 11th edition of your NAACP Speaks, presented by the Lang City branch of the NAACP. I am Kaleem Shabazz, president of the Lang City branch, and I'm joined by my very capable and brilliant co-host, Yolanda Melville Esquire, the legal redress officer for the branch, the political action co-chair, and the national president of the NAACP Next Generation Leadership Program. We're heard every Tuesday from 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. on WEHA 88.7 and 100.3 FM, WEHA. We pray for all the individuals and families who have been affected by COVID-19 here in New Jersey and across this great nation, more than 150,000. We pray for each individual and each family. We pray for their memory, and we pray for a vaccine that will come sooner rather than later to alleviate this scourge of this virus. As always, we acknowledge the very accomplished president and founder of this radio station, Elder William Hawks, and his First Lady. We appreciate and laud his community service. And we also acknowledge our very competent engineers, our Brother Tehran and Stefan. As we move into our program this week, let me just say that we are very concerned about the health crisis in this country. We're concerned for people of color who are having a disproportionate impact on COVID-19. And as we do every week, we encourage you to follow public health guidelines. Don't listen to barbershop doctors. Don't listen to hairdresser doctors. Listen to public health officials and follow the guidelines. We're going to start talking, Yolanda, in the next couple of weeks about the coming flu season. We encourage you to take your flu shots when they become available. And I know there are people who have theories and conspiracies about the flu shot, and they talk about things that have happened to African Americans in medicine and history. And although that is correct, we're in a new day now. Take your flu shot. Yolanda, August 18th, which is this Tuesday at 1 o'clock, the NAACP, in conjunction with the Coalition for a Safe Community, is sponsoring a town hall on 21st century policing, and we encourage everybody to tune into that. Yolanda's going to talk about that in her announcements, but we wanted to just underscore and put a pin in that. That's very important this Tuesday, August 18th. October 22nd is a long way away, not really in terms of what's happening. That's going to be the NAACP Candidates Night, and that has become a institution in the community. The Candidates Night, you'll be hearing more about that. All the candidates, I'm happy to report, that ran in the primary election attended our Candidates Night. We expect all of them to attend this time, Republicans and Democrats, and also our school board candidates. So please circle that date, October 22nd. This is an important election. You need to hear from the candidates and how they express their views and what they talk about, and make sure that they are speaking to your interests. October 22nd. Yolanda, that's all I have for now. Let me turn it over to you, our co-host and producer, Yolanda Melville Esquire.
Well, thank you, President. I am thrilled again to be with you for another afternoon of NAACP Speaks. I think we have some breaking news. I don't know if you want to announce it to our studio audience.
No, go ahead.
Virtual audience.
Oh, let me say this. I forgot one announcement. I wanted to acknowledge Hawks. I wanted to acknowledge engineers. I want to thank all of our audience for listening in, but also want to say a special shout out to our studio audience, and they know who they are. Okay.
That's right. That's right. So we just heard on the news that there is a possible vice presidential pick that's
coming out.
Yes. So
and that is
Kamala Harris from California. She will be the first running mate who is a Black woman, and we are certainly thrilled to hear that Joe Biden has picked not just a woman, but a black woman, because we know we are the bedrock of the voting bloc this presidential season. I also want to note, though, for a little tidbit of history, there's never been a black female governor in the history of the United States. Did you know that?
That's true. I know that.
So,
yeah.
For black women to be this, like I said, this bedrock of the voting pool, eligible voting pool, we certainly have not been in positions of leadership very long. So having someone who is a black woman as a potential vice president is not just phenomenal, it's a milestone, and is obviously milestone setting as something that's never happened before.
There's also never been a African American woman on the Supreme Court.
That's true too. That's another discussion that's come up with Joe Biden as a possible presidential nominee, or the nominee, presumptive nominee at this point. So certainly that's big news.
Right.
I do want to tell people also, though, that black women are a very large established voting bloc when it comes to elections. However, less than 70% of us are actually registered to vote. So although we are a large group, there are about 67% of us in the United States who are registered, who are eligible, which means there are over 30% of black women in this country who are not registered to vote. So don't just assume that if you're a black woman, you're voting. Please.
That's an interesting statistic. Yeah.
Very interesting. Mm-hmm. Please reach out to everybody this election season and, definitely get everyone and anybody in your family to vote. Don't just assume that somebody that you've known for a very long time is a voter, because you just never know. So do you have anything else on that before I turn over to the rest of the remarks?
No, that's very interesting. I didn't know that statistic about African American women. I'm so happy to hear about Kamala Harris. Although the NAACP does not endorse candidates, we encourage people to vote. And Kamala Harris, Senator Harris, is very definitely an outstanding person in this country. She's one of the few African American senators, U.S. senators. In fact, there's not even a handful. There's only 3 of them. There's Senator Scott from South Carolina, our great senator, Senator Cory Booker from New Jersey, and Senator Kamala Harris now. So it's 3 out of 100 U.S. senators. So that shows you how outstanding she is.
Did you know that Kamala Harris is a graduate of Howard University?
My sister told me that several times.
Well,
my sister is a graduate of Howard University. Yes,
it's still school time for you to get a doctoral degree or something, if you'd like to join us.
I know you're priming me for when the prosecutor comes on at 5 o'clock, because he's a graduate of Howard. I think his daughter is going to Howard, and I've heard the Howard story. Howard's one of our great institutions in America.
I just report the news. I remember, and I know we have to quickly get into our news, but I remember when I was just beginning my career, I was working as a law fellow for the NAACP, and Kamala Harris was one of the people that I actually met, and she gave myself and Keela Crane a shout out for being Howard students at the time.
Yeah.
And
I met her at the Baltimore NAACP convention year before last. She was our luncheon speaker, and she was electrifying, and she was just a presence that you could feel that she was going. Well, she's already someplace. She was in Senate, but you can feel that she was really destined for bigger things.
That's right. And that also goes to the power of the NAACP. A lot of times we talk about the issues here in the community, but we know, having gone to so many of the national conventions, that there are so many preeminent leaders, thought leaders, politicians, elected officials, and just civil rights leaders who come through that national convention. So if there's any reason for you to get involved on the ground, there's certainly more of a reason to get involved nationally, because there's so much and so many people that you can just have a glimpse of and learn from as a member of the NAACP. So I want to give very brief remarks. I know we have some special guests coming up. One is how to become a member, and we talked about this at our first ever outside meeting yesterday. I think it went very well. We have some pictures on our social media, but we talked about how to increase our membership, and that there is a very competitive group who are really seeking out how to increase membership, and certainly we applaud their efforts in these trying times, but also the trying times have led to more activism and more participation on the civil rights grassroots level, and increased membership is what we're always looking for every year, but we have so much to do that we always need more members to join us. So for those who do not know, Mandy Days, who is our chair of our infant mortality, Angel Shabazz, who is our secretary, or the litany of people who are in the competitive race for membership, there are other ways that you can become a member. And that is, one, you can send a check to our post office box at Atlantic City NAACP, P.O. Box 1182, Absecon, New Jersey, 08201. And in that, please put your name, address, email address, and phone number. You can always go to naacp.org/become a member. You type in our zip code, and that's 08401. You search for Atlantic City, and you will see 2077B for the Atlantic City branch. And as we say every show, a one-year annual membership is $30, and a youth membership is $10. But we have some exciting news to share about that as well, because we've talked about having a 100 youth movement where we are encouraging 100 youth to join us in the NAACP, where we will give them extensive leadership training and really have them be a part of our movement and the excitement that's going around civil rights at the grassroots level. So we recently got a donor, a few donors. So President Shabazz, who have you received as donors so far?
Well, I want to acknowledge freeholder Ernest Coursey, the freeholder of the 1st District, which Atlantic City is in. He is a donor for 10 youth council memberships, and we thank him profusely for his donation of $100. Also, India Steele Esquire, who was our newest executive committee member, made the same donation. And also, we cannot forget our president here, William Hawks, who is finalizing his check for 10 adult members. And we thank him. Also, Marcus Wilson, who is giving us a 10 adult members also. So the membership drive, I'm happy to report, is in high gear, and we thank everyone, the people who gave hundreds of dollars, and the people who gave $30, and the people who gave $10, and the people who wanted to give but had nothing to give. We thank them for their desire to give, and we appreciate that. As you said, Yolanda, the NAACP is a membership organization, and we are in a membership drive now because we want to focus on growing our branch and growing our impact and our clout. But we're always looking for members, and you can join NAACP anytime, but now it's just a time that we're putting extra effort. And at the end of September, we hope to announce that we've reached and exceeded our goal. But I think you have a special announcement about a person who went above and beyond for the youth. Am I right?
Absolutely. So Tom Hannon and his family, Tom is the executive director of the Atlantic City Housing Authority. He and his family are making a personal donation of $500 for 50 youth memberships. So we are excited to start building the momentum, and we appreciate you, Tom. Thank you for what you've done, and that will help us really galvanize the efforts in Atlantic City to teach our young people more about social justice and how to use their voices.
Well, with Mr. Hannon's donation and what the others you got, I think you're almost to 100.
That's right. But there's still more. There's still more. We have, and we'll be talking about that in the next week, the Youth Leadership Institute that we are starting in September. So there will be a very intensive 7-module leadership training program that will be a special training for about 25 of our youth throughout the Atlantic City area. And the purpose of this is to teach them more about the NAACP, but more about advocacy. They will have guest speakers who can teach them about what they do for a living. And we will also just impart knowledge and have them understand how to be better civic citizens to all of us. And I think there's no better time than now, and there's no better group than our young people. So there's more information coming out about that. So we are asking anyone who wants to help us fundraise for the Leadership Institute. We will certainly reach out to us at Atlantic City Chapter NAACP@gmail.com, and we'll put that information up on our social media for anyone who wants to help us with the Youth Leadership Institute, which is a 7-module intensive training program for young people in the Atlantic City area. Also,
what's the name of the institute, Yolanda, for those people who are interested?
I'm glad that you asked. So we are really excited to announce that the Leadership Institute is going to be called the John Lewis Jim Cooper Leadership Institute. John Lewis, Congressman Lewis, is someone who was a thought leader, was a young activist himself, and we just lost him a few weeks ago, but his legacy lives on. He was one of the most champions. He was a champion of the Voting Rights Act, which we know is 55 years in its anniversary as of last week. But John Lewis started his advocacy and his activism at 26 years old. We are just harnessing his spirit. He died at 80 years old, which means it's a long legacy to live. But we are harnessing his spirit and what he stood for to teach our young people about using their voices. Jim Cooper is another person. If you do not know him, he was the founding partner of Cooper Levinson, where I work. But he was more than that. He was someone who was part of John F. Kennedy's Lawyers Committee in the 1960s. And the Lawyers Committee was formed as attorneys went down to the South. And Jim Cooper went to Philadelphia, Mississippi. And when he went down there, he helped to represent persons of color, namely Black men, who did not have access to attorneys, but certainly were on trial for various issues that were happening in the 1960s. And there's a long story, and President Shabazz, you worked closely with him for many, many years, and he was, in fact, your attorney when you were a young activist. So we felt
Absolutely.
that this was an apt combination of two people who represent the NAACP's values, the multiracial approach to civil rights, and the betterment of society through all levels of participation, from young activists to professionals who really go out in the world and try to make a difference for all of us. So we are including their names. We are honored to be including their names, and we will start this off right. Isn't that right, President?
Yeah, absolutely. I also wanted to recognize the proprietor of Mel's Furniture Store in Atlantic City, who also made a donation to the youth of $125, and we appreciate his support. We don't want to leave anyone out. We appreciate and thank everyone for their support. Yolanda, I am so excited about the Youth Institute, as you said, named for Congressman John Lewis and Jim Cooper here of Atlantic City. Jim Cooper also was a tremendous supporter of the NAACP, as Congressman Lewis was on the national level, Jim Cooper on the local level. So
Right.
I think that we have two very good foundational points to build our institute on. And I'm looking for great things, great leaders to come out, great citizens, great human beings. And I think it's going to be a credit to the Atlantic City branch NAACP. And I just want to thank the executive committee for approving that. And it was a unanimous consent for us to move forward. And I think that everyone's going to be very, very proud for those parents and grandparents and uncles and aunts in Atlantic City. What are the ages of the youngsters again?
So for the first pilot program, we're looking at ages 13 through 16. So there are opportunities in the future to certainly build upon that. And this will not be the last time we have this institute. But for the first group, the first 25, we'll be teaching ages 13 through 16. And I'll just say this. Atlantic City's Youth Council is special to the NAACP. And one of two of us on this today's episode can certainly attest to the excitement as a person who was part of the Atlantic City Youth Council. And on the national level, the Atlantic City Youth Council used to be one of the biggest youth councils in the country. And
absolutely.
We are still, I will say this, this is not as a slight to our youth council as it exists, because I really want to give them their shout outs as well. They've marched with us. They've traveled around the country. They have their own programming. And we certainly just want to build on those leaders that we see in the community. If I go to an event, they may be there. And I certainly want to shout out all of our youth council who are past members, current members, and we want to help you build and use your voice even more in the community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're right. And our youth council president is graduating. She's going to be one of our scholarship winners. And we we thank Linda Steele for the work she's done with the Youth Council, and also our brother Charles Goodman, who is recovering from a health condition. They did very, very excellent work from on the Youth Council. Also, Yolanda, let me just refresh people's memory. We're getting ready to have the National Convention virtually in the month of September, but we are going to be hosting the National Convention in Atlantic City in 2022, and this is another new announcement. We're also going to be hosting the State NAC Convention in 2022. So 2022 is going to be a big year for us. National Convention in July, State Convention in the fall of 2022. So we're getting ready for both of those singular events in Atlantic City.
That's right. You also asked me to mention what's going on here locally and all the partnerships that we have formed with other community stakeholders, including the Coalition for a Safe Community. And one of those events that we'll be doing is the 20th Century Policing Program, Tuesday, August 18th, 1 p.m. via Zoom. And Christopher Lusner, who is the Chief of Police for Middle Township, will be our keynote speaker. And he is the president of the New Jersey State Association of Chiefs of Police. So we are looking forward to having that very insightful and informative conversation because the work never stops, right? You know, we're talking about 2022, but certainly the work at our local level continues to morph and grow as the national spotlight is being put on Atlantic City to bring its finest and really be a stakeholder to civil rights policies in the country.
Well, I'm glad you said that because I want our audience to know that this year, one of our continuing focuses is going to be law enforcement, criminal justice reform, interacting the police and the community, working with the Attorney General as he develops and reviews for the first time in 20 years the use of force in New Jersey. And we are a partner at the NACP state level and local level with the Attorney General, and we're working on programs to ensure that things get better. That's our special guest at the 5 o'clock hour is going to talk about that. Prosecutor Tyner, who I'm happy to report was our speaker last night, as you said, at our first outdoor meeting ever. And let me take a minute, Yolanda, to thank the host, Pastor Elias Thomas of Community Baptist Church, a senior pastor there, who so graciously allowed us to use his parking lot facility, his chairs, his podium to have our meeting. And also let me give a shout out to Linda Steele, our treasurer. It was really her idea. It wasn't my idea. I think it's a good idea. And we are looking, God willing, to have the September meeting, weather permitting, again at Pastor Thomas's Church at Community Baptist. Now, again, we thank him for allowing us to use the facility, open it to us, and for his hospitality and his support. But I think it was a good meeting, and we kept within our time strictures, and I think we heard a good message. We got our business done, and we're moving forward. Happy to report.
We certainly had a few notable people in the audience. We had President Alexander Bland from the Cape May NAACP.
That's the youngest president in the state, right?
Yeah. Youngest president in the state, and he's next gen. I don't know if he went to Howard, but certainly that's okay. That's okay.
We have Councilman Randolph too, who was the councilman in that first ward.
That's right, Councilman Randolph. Doug Stanger, was he there? I think I saw him.
No, Rabbi Krause. I mean, not Rabbi Krause.
Was there.
Rabbi Weiss. Rabbi Weiss and his wife. Yeah. Okay. Reverend McLaurin.
We created quite a buzz. Yeah. I think people certainly were looking at us and saying, "What's going on in there?" We had some people walk in and sit down, and it was a good time. And I certainly, there are ways that we can get the work done and still be safe.
Right.
I do have one more.
Just so everybody knows, everyone had on a mask, and we were socially distanced.
That's right. Yeah. And we ended on time.
We ended on time. Absolutely.
I have one more announcement before I turn it over to you for our 5 o'clock hour, and that's the 2020 March on Washington that is being partly sponsored by the NAACP. So that begins Thursday, August 27th at 8 p.m., and it will end on Friday, August 28th at around 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you want more information about that, you can text POWER, POWER, to 40649, POWER, POWER, to 40649, or you can visit the NAACP.org and always visit the NAACP on its Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook for more information. So the purpose this year, obviously, is to commemorate the March on Washington, but it will be with the times. And what I mean by that is there are opportunities to go to a virtual rally and also a socially distant march if you prefer to be on site. So there's more information at the NAACP's national website, but we want to lift that up and encourage people to participate in however way they can.
But the NAACP's involvement is all virtual, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for those announcements. Yolanda, as always, we appreciate you. I am going to, I see the prosecutor has joined us, and since he's a Howard graduate and you're a Howard graduate, and I'm a Rutgers alumni, I'm going to back up and allow you to introduce the prosecutor to our audience, our radio audience, and our studio audience.
Well, thank you, President.
Yeah.
Prosecutor Tyner, right before you joined us, we learned that Kamala Harris is going to be our presumptive presidential nominee on the Democratic side, and we were having a discussion on all the preeminent Howard grads that we know, and you came up as one of distinction. And I did tell our president that he has time to get a doctorate if he so chooses from Howard University.
Well, my sister's a Howard graduate. Doesn't that count?
No.
No? Okay.
We'll let you go to homecoming now.
Okay. Thank you.
Some events. So, Prosecutor Tyner, I know you are no stranger to our program, but for those who have not heard from you yet, I'd like to talk about your bio first, and then we'll get right into the first question. So, Prosecutor Damon G. Tyner was appointed to the Atlantic County Prosecutor's Office as the Atlantic County Prosecutor on March 15, 2017, by the Governor of New Jersey with the advice and consent of the State Senate. He previously served as a judge of the Superior Court of New Jersey from 2014 through 2017. He served in both the Chancery Division, Family Part, and the Criminal Division. Prosecutor Tyner previously served as an administrative law judge in the Office of Administrative Law from July 2012 until 2014. He is a graduate of the Howard University and Widener University School of Law. And he was admitted to the practice of law in the state of New Jersey in 1997. Mm-hmm. While in private practice, Prosecutor Tyner's practice consisted of real estate development, land use matters, municipal law, labor law, and education law. During his career, he served as the solicitor of the Winslow Township Board of Education and the Pleasantville Board of Education. Additionally, he was a city solicitor for the city of Summers Point, as well as labor counsel to the Pleasantville Board of Education and the Atlantic City Housing Authority. Mm-hmm. Prosecutor Tyner was counsel to Parker McKay and an associate of Fox Rothschild. Prosecutor Tyner was featured in the 2007 edition of the New Jersey Super Lawyers Rising Stars. In 2006, he served on the Revitalizing New Jersey Communities Committee of Governor John Corzon's transition team. In 2005, he was named to the top 40 under 40 by the Atlantic City Weekly and Greater Atlantic City JCs. And in 2014, he was named to the New Jersey Law Journal's 40 under 40, honoring the top 40 attorneys under 40 in the state of New Jersey. Prosecutor Tyner's service has been recognized by both the Atlantic County Bar Association and the community as a recipient of the Honorable Benjamin A. Rim Award. And and the Judge Herbert Jacobs Award from the African American Male Conference. He is a native of Atlantic City and now resides in Egg Harbor Township with his beautiful wife and family. Welcome, Prosecutor Tyner.
Oh, well, thank you very much for that incredible introduction, but the more I hear that bio, I realize how old I'm getting.
That's all right. It's because you're a Howard grad, these distinctions come often to you, so I know it must be tough.
Oh, my goodness.
we have these debates in my house too because my wife is a Rutgers grad. So
Good for her. That's right. Go ahead, Nicole.
Steiner is in fact a Rutgers grad, so
right.
It's tough. It's tough.
I think fondly of Dr. Steiner, but I think I need to talk to her about her educational choices. But she's very, very nice, very intelligent. So the first thing that has been on my mind was the conversation that you had yesterday about the ability to have discretion and how you've used it to advocate on behalf of people while sitting on the side of really administering justice on behalf of the government, right? And what I mean by that is you were once a judge and now you're a prosecutor, and you gave a profound story, and I would like you to repeat the story for the audience because I thought it was so good that I think that it should be shared.
Okay. The conversation started out with me describing how so many times I've been asked why I would step off the bench to become the prosecutor. And I was describing the awesome responsibility that we have, both as judges, but especially as a prosecutor, in using our discretion on determining whether or not to charge a matter or to even pursue penalties against individuals for a variety of incidents. But as much as people sometimes don't realize how limited judges have the use of their discretion. They have wide discretion, but sometimes in sentencing, sometimes in, if there's a trial, that's up to the jury. We can determine things in motion practice and things of that nature. So judges do have a varied amount of discretion, but the prosecutor has way, way more discretion. But in describing how this discretion and the proper use of it is so important and is such an important responsibility, I did tell a story about when I was a judge, and there was a woman, single mother, appearing before me in the family division, and DCP&P, who, and they're, with all due respect to them, they try to do a really, really good job and protect kids. So the story isn't to knock them, but it's to really illustrate the experience that some workers have and some don't. But there was a single mother, and DCP&P was filing an application to take her child because they had indicated that she had neglected the child in leaving the child alone. And I do not recall the child was 6 years old or 4 years old. It was a rather young child. So the mother, I had asked her, I said, well, did you in fact leave your child unattended? And she said, well, I did, but I didn't. And she went on to describe how she had a job, she was working, and if she was late one more time, she was going to lose her job. And she said, I had child care for my child. My sister was on her way home from her job. She worked the overnight shift, and she was on her way home, but she was running late. But I had to catch the bus to work, and I had to make a decision. Do I miss the bus and be late for work and lose this job, and then I'm unable to care for my child? Or do I make a judgment decision and leave my child who was sleeping in the bedroom, sound asleep? Do I leave her and go to work, and allowing for that 5 to 10 minute period of time when my sister would be there to supervise and take care of the child? Ultimately, she made a decision to leave the child because her sister assured her that she was going to be there. She makes her bus, she goes on to work, but unfortunately her sister got into a car accident, and so she did not get there. The child was unattended for, woke up, was wandering around. A neighbor called the police and called DCP&P, and that's how they got involved. The DCP&P worker was a very young worker. She was approximately 25 or 26, no children, had never been involved in a situation like this. She was from a suburban community. She just had no understanding. The way she viewed things were simply black and white, and not as a result of color or race, but literally black and white as to something's either right or wrong. And she did not understand the gray areas that the circumstances of life bring up. So as a result of that, she was adamant that she wanted to, displace this child from her mother and put her in the foster care system. And after the mother fully explained the situation and I asked her if she understood, she still really didn't have understanding of all the efforts that this mother had made to provide care for her child. I ultimately used my discretion and made a decision that the child would not be displaced, that she would remain with her mother. But years later, that worker, after she had had children of her own and had started to gain some life's experience, came back to me and thanked me for sort of teaching her about how life sometimes gets in the way. And but if you put a different judge that maybe had the same type of background as that worker and never or came from a much more privileged background and didn't understand how these things happen, they could have exercised their discretion in a much different manner. So this is why it's critical, really, to have judges, to have probation officers, DCP&P workers, prosecutors, public defenders, lawyers, everybody that is involved in the system, that touches the system, probation officers, parole officers, that come from such a wide, diverse experience that they can really lend their expertise to a situation when it arises. It's just critical. So that entire story really I wanted to drive home the point that we live in a democracy, and a democracy is a player participation form of government for those sports fans out there. You have to participate. We need a wide variety of people that are involved in it to really make the system work. Because if we just have such a monochromatic, people that have singular views, step away from race for a moment, but people that come from the same backgrounds with the same views, whether they're religious or they're political, but they have the same views, then you're only going to get the same decisions, and you're not going to really fully experience the full plethora of the fruits of our country, and our greatest strength is our diversity.
Mr. Prosecutor, one of the pregnant issues of today is the movement to defund the police, and people are responding all across the ideological spectrum with regard to that question. How do you respond to cries for defund the police?
Hey, and I addressed this in a recent article that I wrote, and it was meant to start this type of dialogue, President Shabazz, but I emphatically disagree with the principle of defunding the police. We shouldn't think about defunding anything. We should start thinking about fully funding education, start fully funding social services, start fully funding mental illness and things of that nature. These are the things that we need to fully fund before we start talking about defunding anything. I read, it just happened that I read the article today. Brother Shabazz knows that I'm a prolific reader.
Absolutely.
But I read an article today that since March 18th, America has created 69 new billionaires. Those that were already billionaires have increased their wealth significantly. When you look at someone like, and I don't want to knock these folks too much because some of them are very, very, philanthropic. But Jeff Bezos, who is the richest man in America, he increased his wealth from about $68 billion to $118 billion. He almost doubled his wealth, which was very, very significant. His wife, who, shout out to her because she just gave Howard $40 million.
She did?
Yes, she did. She
did.
On Giving Day, she gave away $1.7 billion to various causes throughout the entire country, and throughout the entire world. But among those gifts was a $40 million gift to Howard University.
That's admirable.
But even her, she gave away I want you to consider this. She gave away $1.7 billion between March 18th and June 18th. On March 18th, she was worth $36 billion. As of June 18th, she was worth $42 billion. So in their world, she gave away loose change.
Right.
And once again, I am not knocking, or do I begrudge anyone who has used their talents and they have earned their money. That's not the issue. But the issue is that we live in a society where we have so much extreme wealth. But before we start talking about defunding anything, there are so many things that we can do to fully fund so that we don't have the need for the police as much.
Right. Prosecutor Tyner, I don't know if you saw the incident in California where these two young African-American males called the police for help, and the highway patrol came and they pulled a rifle on the young men who called for help. And the father and the mother did an interview, and they said the young men are very upset, and they are looking at therapy because they're so upset. Also, there was an incident in Aurora, Ohio. Aurora, Colorado. You know the incident. Here's my point is, we see these incidents happening over and over all across the country. What do you think our response should be as people who are trying to reform the criminal justice system and our interactions with it?
It's so very difficult because just as I would like to say that New Jersey is ahead of the curve on a lot of this stuff, we see that incidents occur in New Jersey that have to be fully vetted. I will not talk about the most recent incident that occurred on the Atlantic City and Ventnor border, just because that incident is still under investigation by the Office of the Attorney General, as well as the Maurice Gordon matter that happened on the Parkway.
The Turnpike, right? Parkway.
Still being investigated.
Right.
But by and large, the types of incidents that you've seen throughout the country have not occurred here in New Jersey. And I believe that is attributed to the level of training that our officers receive here, not only initially but continuously. The policies that have been put in place, in connection with Attorney General Graywall's excellence in policing initiatives. We have mandatory implicit bias training now for not only every police officer, but also for every assistant prosecutor in the state of New Jersey. I think that is, I would match that against any other state in the country. There might be some states that are doing as much as New Jersey, but there's not one state that's doing more than New Jersey in trying to educate our law enforcement professionals as to how to interact and communicate with people. And it all starts with communication. We should not there should be no person, period, who calls the police for help and then find themselves being interrogated as if they were the wrongdoer. Now, there are many times when circumstances change when you get on the scene. I can think of incidents where there was a car accident. An officer arrives, but in the car that there's a car accident, there are a large cache of drugs or guns.
Right.
So things happen.
Right.
But to the situation in Aurora, Colorado, it was just heartbreaking because here you have 2 adult women and 3 children, I believe, and it was a mistaken license plate. There was another car that was stolen. There was a car that was stolen, or a motorcycle that was stolen, that had the same identical license plate as the car that this family was traveling in. But there are so many levels that you have to get through before it gets to the point where you are detaining folks and putting them on the ground. And particularly 3 kids that all look to be under the age of 12.
They were, yeah.
That your hand,
one was 6 years old. Yeah.
It boggles my mind as to how something like that happens. And I mean, and look, I've stated my pedigree many times. People in this community, I'm an open book. People in this community know who I am. They know my connection to law enforcement. If anything, there are other people in the community that would look at me with a jaundiced eye and say that, well, the prosecutor's overly pro-police. But any police officers that say, oh, well, there's none that can say Tyner is anti-police. I am always going to support good police officers. What I will not tolerate are police officers who engage in criminal or bad conduct and tarnish the images of the overwhelming majority that are good. And I just had this conversation on another program the other day. I do, in fact, believe that the overwhelming majority of the police officers here in Atlantic County do an incredible job, and they put their life on the line every day. But in those rare instances where there are folks that abuse their authority, they're going to feel the full thrust of my power and of my office. And before you go on, just to, one of the things that we talked about last night as well was my just disbelief that Attorney General of the country, William Barr, would indicate, or under testimony, sworn testimony, that he believes that there is no systemic racism in this country.
Right.
I'm going to date myself a little bit, but in June I celebrated my 50th birthday, and on that call I had a Zoom call with my closest friends from Howard University, and there were 11 of us on a Zoom call, and we were just talking about the state of affairs today. We were talking about different things, talking about memories from college. And I can tell you, and these are all professional men. These are a dentist, a music industry executive, chief of a fire department, former chief of the Pasadena, California Fire Department. He's now a deputy chief in San Bernardino County. Mortgage executive. These were all quality, top flight young men in their time growing up. They turned into great fathers, great role models all throughout the entire country. But we had a Zoom call for my birthday. There were 11 of us. I was the only one who had never had a negative experience or encounter with law enforcement. I thought it just boggled my mind. And like I said, your friends who are a little wild in college and everything, these are all legitimate people. And when we were going through some memories, I was the only one that did not have a negative encounter. I credit that to my ability to communicate with people. I credit that to my father Hank, my uncle Bob, and all of their friends who were, police officers. We just lost an old one very recently, Wesley Hawkins Sr.
Wesley Hawkins,
passed away. But, I was fortunate that I grew up in a home that, we had police officers in and out of our home. They were there for their weekly card games. So I had an ability to get to know them, to understand that, look, these people are just trying to get home after their shift. As a young man, my father taught us, and we had the same talk that everybody had, that when you encounter a police officer, black, white, purple, whoever he is, you respect that badge, you comply with their request, and you try to get home safe. I understand, though, that there have been times when we've had victims that have complied, have fully complied, and they've still lost their lives. And those are the tragedies that we have to work hard as a society to eliminate. And that's going to take everybody understanding and communicating with one another.
Yolanda, you have a question as to Howard alum?
Yes, and I just found out Prosecutor Tyner and I are both born in June, so that is better.
Oh, my goodness.
June 2nd.
I'm June 4th. There you go.
Oh, look at that. Look at that.
There you go.
Oh, my.
Sorry, President. You had to be born in July. It's okay.
Yeah, okay. Now, I didn't go to Howard. What can I do? Yeah, all right.
There's still time. It may be more competitive now that we have an endowment from a Bezos, but it's fine.
Yeah.
You might be able to get in. So, Prosecutor Tyner, we had you here last week briefly to talk about your op-ed. And can you give us a bit of an update on some of the feedback you've heard? Has it now been published? Give us some more information.
Once again, I want to thank the Press of Atlantic City for publishing the commentary. We had talked about it and that its length violated their typical policies for such commentaries, which is normally 750 words. What I had to say about the issues that are facing us today far exceeded 750 words. So I've gotten a lot of great feedback from a cross-section of our community that all believe that it was something that everyone needed to hear. For those folks that only see the looters or the rioters and say why they behaved like that, they saw just recently that the Atlantic City Police Department is prepared to file charges against 95 people who did act in a lawless fashion. So we're not ever going to excuse criminal behavior. Let's make that clear. But at the same time, those people who ask those questions should really understand that there are peaceful demonstrators out there, and they're demonstrating because you have an inordinate amount of black and brown men and women that are dying at the hands of police officers in incidents that could really be avoided. Once we come to a clear understanding that that there is a reason to demonstrate, there is a reason to bring attention to these matters. Everyone becomes a philosopher in these types of incidents, but one of the memes that I did see that I thought was appropriate was that involving Colin Kaepernick, and he said people said, well, he took a knee, so because he wanted to demonstrate that this knee was happening, and it showed.
I think you muted yourself, Prosecutor.
By accident, yeah. It showed the former police officer in Minnesota that was placing his knee on George Floyd's neck, cutting off his air supply when he could have just restrained him in other lawful manner.
Well, I know we discussed last night that we are instituting a Young Leadership Institute this coming fall. And I want to let you know that your op-ed will be a required reading for our young people because we want them to know that advocacy does begin at home. Mm-hmm. And if you'd like, you're always welcome to come and talk to our young people about your journey and how you became the leader that you are today. So, thank you.
Thank you. I will always take that opportunity to speak to someone, kids that are coming up from behind. Certainly, it is. They're our future. So, I benefited from a lot of people in our community, and I would always use any time that I have to speak to others to try to help develop and mold them. One of the things that we have here in Atlantic County, and Kaleem and I have talked about this a lot, we have a brain drain. We have so many talented young people that after they graduate high school, they go on to college, medical school, law school, and they keep on going, and they don't bring their talents to back home for a variety of reasons. We were fortunate that you decided, Yolanda, to come into our community, but where you look at like some of the other major metropolises, for everyone that they lose, they get someone to come back in. Well, we may lose 10 people, but only get one Yolanda Melville coming into our community. We don't have an even exchange. So we don't have the young, fresh ideas that are coming into our community to make it better. And that's something that we need.
Mm-hmm. Prosecutor Tyner, it's been a pleasure having you. We have 3 minutes left. Would you like to give us a 1-minute summary of whatever you want to say? And again, it's been a pleasure having you. Thank you for taking your time.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. This year, for obvious reasons with the pandemic and everything else, we're not having National Night Out. Normally, in August, we would have that opportunity to come together as a community. Now more than ever, an event like National Night Out is needed in all of our communities. But due to the pandemic, we're not going to be able to have that. So I want to take this as an opportunity, and Kaleem, you could perhaps promote it later. But the Coalition of Safe Communities is going to have a Zoom prayer for our community, and we just have to, we just really, really have to come together. Mm-hmm. There are just so many, and I'll go out on a limb here, but, for so many times that someone says Black Lives Matter, and then someone says that all lives matter, we have to realize in our community that violence against one another is unacceptable, and it's not. I don't care what race you are, I don't care what religion you are, but extending violence against, the gun violence, it's just so frustrating on so many levels as a law enforcement leader when I get a call in the middle of the night that someone has been murdered or that a kid has lost their life as a result of accidental gun death or being caught in a crossfire. These are the things that keep me up at night, and I just want to make a plea to our community to shut that down, and let's just stay safe and healthy.
Thank you, Mr. Prosecutor. Thank you. Yolanda, closing remarks quickly as we go to the closing.
As Prosecutor kind of mentioned, there is a National Night Out prayer service that will be featured here right on WEHA, Gospel FM 88.7 and 100.3 in the next 30 minutes. Starts at 6 o'clock p.m. until 7. And so we will post this on our Facebook momentarily, but it will be featured here on WEHA Gospel. So thank you for that reminder as well.
Thank you. Stay tuned. Tune back in at 6 o'clock. Thank you, Prosecutor Tyner. Thank you, Yolanda Melville, alumni, Howard alumni, and all my Rutgers alumni, and all alumni across the city. When we fight, we win. When we fight, we win. When we fight, we win. See you next week.
We're living proof and all's alert that we're too from the good life. Well, yeah.
from the physician. My heart started pounding as I listened to what was said, 'cause in my head I never thought it could happen to me. But I recall what I was taught in the 34th chapter of the book of Psalms. In spite of our afflictions, He'll deliver us from them all. My trust still lies in You. I know You're gonna bring me through this trial, but I'm not ending now. I know it's gonna get hard sometimes, and when those moments come,